What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. When we talk about government funding, government waste, government tax dollars that are going out the window, we talk about Doge. We want a Doge in Canada to audit the waste that goes through our government. Well, there's no further waste. There's no larger waste, as far as I'm concerned, at least that we're aware of as of yet, than the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or the CBC, the Communist Broadcasting Corporation. What we've seen from the CBC in recent years has just been alarming. The fact that they are essentially just an extension of the government to push their propaganda. I grew up in the 80s and 90s at a time when you could watch the CBC with people like Peter Mansbridge, and they were somewhat reputable. People would actually listen to what the CBC had to say. Pierre Poilievre, of course, has made no shortcomings by coming out and saying that he is going to defund the CBC. And of course, that just does nothing more than fuel the old propaganda machine to go out there and push for their jobs as we head into sometime, whether it's now, whether it's next year, whether it's a decade from now, who knows with these tricks of the Liberals. But whenever we push into a federal election, the propaganda arm is going to be really strong. But what we're seeing now is that the Liberals want to pad that propaganda machine. They want to make sure it's protected. Now they want to nearly double CBC funding as an investment in national security. How else do you say propaganda machine? It's national security. We got to make sure they get our message and our message only out there. Keep in mind our earlier video talking about Ruby Dalla being disqualified. I mean, the CBC had Liberal insider information about that before her party was even notified she was disqualified. They're just the government's propaganda arm. The Liberals want Canada to pay more for their public broadcaster, says the country's national security depends on it. Heritage Minister Pascal presented her plan for the future of CBC Radio Canada on Thursday, an apparent response to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's plan to defund the CBC. The 17-page document details how the Liberals want to transform the CBC's funding model and governance by nearly doubling the amount of money Canadians spend each year and removing advertising from news programmings. I think Catherine Tate's going to be very happy with that. Maybe she can buy another condo, maybe Billionaires Row this time. Public finances are a matter of concern for Canadian population, but so is our national security and our sovereignty, said Pascal, who also confirmed she would not be running in the next federal election for family reasons. Not because their party's in the toilet, not because she's a corrupt snake, but just because of family reasons, guys. It's legitimate. We can believe that, right? Come on. She said the proposal should be part of a package of measures put in place to protect Canada from foreign interference and from threats like the Trump administration and from the hegemony in the place of the richest men on the planet occupying the public space of discussion, debate, and information. So again, she's talking about folks like Elon Musk, Donald Trump. Again, I've said this a million times over. They're using any build up to another election to now push Donald Trump as the narrative to all those with Trump derangement syndrome, to say, oh, Orange Man bad. Just say what we want to hear. Do what we say. Follow us like a lemming because Orange Man bad. She repeatedly attacked the tech oligarchs of the United States, often referred to as the CEOs of Google, Meta, Amazon, and Tesla, for their proximity and influence of the President of the United States. She also argued that Canadians need a remedy to combat the misinformation that often circulates on social media. Well, then defund them. If you want to get rid of misinformation, defund the CBC. So this is an investment in the sovereignty of our country, in the security of our country, and also in the economic viability of our country. I wonder if ChatGPT writes their speeches, because it's the same one over and over again. The timing of the announcement raised eyebrows, and the minister soon stepping down, her party selecting a new leader on March 9th. Nope, they're installing a new leader on March 9th, and the likelihood that Canadians will go to the polls this spring. No, they won't. No, they won't. Mark Carney and his so-called competition are already laying out that Donald Trump is an emergency measure, folks. We need emergency powers to delay the election to 2026. She also said conservative obstruction in the House of Commons prevented her from delivering her plan for the CBC in the fall. What obstruction? You guys didn't hand documents over to the RCMP. It's your fault. But they're going to blame the Conservatives? With Parliament now prorogued, the minister's announcement was not a new bill, but a roadmap. In fact, she didn't say whether legislation to implement the new changes was ready to be introduced once the House reconvenes. During her press conference, the minister said she wanted this new model to take politics out of the CBC. What? What? Excuse me, Mr. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in the dictionary under redundant, it says see redundant. Take the politics out of the CBC and then attack the Conservatives for their intention to defund it. Somebody get this woman rehab, because she's clearly on something. She needs it. She needs Jesus. My God. You cannot say that you love Canada and yet pledge to destroy our public broadcaster that is central in telling the stories of our country, she said. Oh, you can't love your country and not want the propaganda network. Pierre doesn't know what it means to put Canada first, or else he would choose to protect Canadian institutions that belong to Canadians and exist for Canadians, she added. Give me a break. Did she make this announcement on CBC? Only somebody who's blind and watches that channel would agree with the shit she's shoveling. Poilievre didn't wait long to criticize the minister's roadmap, as he himself was having a press conference in Toronto during the minister's speech. Almost nobody watches CBC television. They have amongst the worst ratings of any network, and yet Trudeau gives them billions more. We're going to cut wasteful spending, not just there, but across the government, to bring down inflation, deficits, and taxes. That's common sense, he said. It's not just common sense. It would be stupid not to. It would be stupid. See, here's the thing. A lot of people are saying, do you think we'll see a Doge in Canada? I don't think Pierre has a choice at this point. He has to have something. The amount of waste, the avarice, probably shocking. When you see everything the Americans are uncovering right now, what do you think Canada would dig up? The minister did not specify, however, the exact amount of federal government would add to the CBC's budget. Currently, Ottawa spends about $1.38 billion on its public broadcaster, which works out to an average of $33.66 per person. I'd rather spend that on anything, literally anything. The minister's goal was to bring Canada, which now ranks 6th amongst G7 countries in spending on its public broadcaster, closer to the $62 average. No thank you. In addition, the media landscape has changed dramatically over the past decade, with broadcasters seeing their ratings plummet. According to CBC, more Canadians now watch the CBC online than on traditional television. That's because it's all of us YouTubers that are getting copyright strikes trying to get your propaganda out there. Nobody's actually watching you, CBC. It's one of those old, we're not laughing with you, we're laughing at you. In its latest annual report, the public broadcaster said it had a 5.2% audience share, but reached an average of 20 million unique visitors each month on its digital platforms. Again, I'd say, how many of those people were digging up clips? How many of those people are people hate watching it, not watching it for information? The government also wants CBC to stop charging subscription fees for its digital services, such as CBC Gem. They shouldn't have the right, where they're funded by the public. I can agree with that one. If they're going to exist as a government-funded entity, they shouldn't be charging for memberships or subscriptions because they're subsidized. They're subsidized by the government. If they wanted to be their own network, their own publisher, then by all means, charge away. We've seen lots of platforms do that. We are pleased to see the steps forward in this direction and see that subscription fees will be eliminated in this new mandate. This was one of our first requests in order to ensure the content produced is accessible to all. Well, it's technically not, because as soon as you talk about it, they flag you. Liberals also want to change the way CBC is funded, moving from parliamentary appropriations, which the federal government's general budget, to statutory appropriations, which are set out in the Act of Parliament that is not voted on annually by Parliament. Funding level based on per capita formula would provide greater certainty, according to the government. With increased public funding, CBC would be prohibited from broadcasting advertising during its news, information, and public affairs programs on all of its services. So again, they're making ad revenue, right? Publicly funded ad revenue, subscription fees. I mean, Catherine Tate must love life right now. This is a long-standing request from private media outlets which criticize Radio Canada for raking in hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising revenue. Again, if they're so great at it, then why do they need government funding? CBC's revenues accounted to $213 million. Radio Canada's were $214. So it's almost $500 million every year in ad revenue. So why do they need over $1 billion in government handouts? By the way, doesn't Catherine Tate look like the Crypt Keeper? You guys ever watch Tales from the Crypt? She looks like I'm waiting for her to say "Good evening, boys and ghouls" whenever she shows up at a press conference, or a hearing for that matter, because we all know she spent a lot of time in those public hearings. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think about the CBC. Should they just be defunded? I know what you're going to say. But say it anyways. Let's show the CBC that their numbers are skewed, that nobody's watching them. Let's put them to shame in the comments. Let me know down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you hit that button, you click your bell for notifications. Join me live here on the channel this Wednesday, as well as this Friday, for our 2 live streaming shows that happen weekly. Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays, Friday Night Fringe on Fridays. Friday Night Fringe, I'm joined by the very beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we go over everything that has happened this week in Canadian politics, everything we know that's coming up on the week ahead, as well as back and forth on both streams within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I love hearing what you guys have to say outside of making these videos, but I look forward to hearing what you have to say this Wednesday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.